Today we get to talk to audio wizard, sample maker, and beatsmith Zain Wolf. His work can be found on Audiobox, Saturate Records, and Splice. To me, his catalog is like a labyrinth, full of secret messages, unexpected tones, and hidden treasures. Zain,
Yes.
who do you credit for getting you into music? Like, who sowed the first musical seeds?
Well, I actually started, I think, when I was about 12 or 11, and I used to spend holidays by my cousins. They first lived in Bloemfontein, and then they lived in Pretoria, and my mom and I used to go visit them quite often. And our older cousin was listening to like a lot of Eminem, rap music, Linkin Park, the whole shebang, and he had like he treated like he wanted to learn all the lyrics, so he treated learning the lyrics like studying for an exam. And that kind of inspired me because I was like, I could also rap. If this guy can do it, I can do it too. And I think what really made me want to do it is I was very young and I watched 8 Mile, and I was like, yeah, I really want to rap. So I started like trying to write lyrics and stuff, and then I wanted to make my own songs, but there wasn't anybody to make any beats for me. So I decided I was going to make beats for myself, using my hi-fi that my mom bought me for my birthday. And yeah, I used to tape like beats onto like from CDs. I would tape beats on one side, and then my friend would borrow me his recorder, and we'd use another tape, play the beats via the hi-fi, and then record onto that with our raps. I would say my elder cousin, and then another cousin of mine that I lived with, who used to get a lot of different kinds of music, electronic music, things from the Cranberries to Blink 182 to Faithless. When I really decided to take production seriously was around about when I found DJ Shadow, obviously during the days of LimeWire and blogs, and obviously downloaded what I could and started listening, and I really liked the way he made like hip hop beats, and that really got me involved in learning about sampling and just learning how to produce stuff. And then I read like a whole bunch of books. So I would credit it to my cousins and like DJ Shadow in my initial period of when I started making music.
That's very beautiful, man. Who would you say some of the sampling gods are? Because it's not really a medium that you find is like very out there and in your face in terms of like commercial,
Yeah.
like who are some of like the goats when you're looking at, people that sample stuff?
Obviously DJ Shadow for one. Jay Dilla. Jay Dilla is definitely probably the most insane sampler I know. The records he used to find were so obscure, and because I think also because of Jay Dilla and because of DJ Shadow, I discovered a hell of a lot of music. I think also DJ Premier is a pretty good sampler. Madlib obviously goes without saying. Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
What would you say is the common thread like that makes them that good? Like if you look at them and you're like, okay, these guys are the goats. Is there like a common thread? Is it like something that they share or have in common that would make one be like, these guys are the legendary guys? What elements do they have in what they do that makes them that good?
I think particularly their knack and attachment and love for music and vast kinds of music. Because of their sampling catalog, they definitely listen to such a wide variety of music and were never bogged down by like one genre of music. DJ Shadow and Jay Dilla both, make essentially hip hop music or alternative hip hop music. And the records that they used or the records that they found, like you don't find that kind of stuff just trying to search for it. And I mean, being back in sort of the 90s and early 2000s, it wasn't super easy to, kind of hit up a blog and just, find stuff randomly. You go to record stores and you actually have to actively listen to stuff. And so I think the common thread with all of them is, I guess, their knack for their love for music. and then I guess a creativity to be able to reinvent old music and reinvigorate it.
Considering that you have this sort of multi-genre approach to making your own music, and it's coming from your influencers who they themselves also have an interest in many genres, how important is this collection of taste when it comes to developing your own sonic identity?
I think I think it's quite imperative, because if you're unaware of the different genres of music or unaware to execute particular things, or you learn about, because I've always kind of seen music as a language, and you've got to sort of learn the idioms of the different genres, little context phrases or things that make sense, particularly within that genre, and then being able to reinvent and creatively push it towards your own sort of sound. I think there comes a point after trying to emulate somebody where your own stylistic choice or your own creativity, I think I wouldn't be able to really pinpoint it. Some people can call it inspiration, some people can call it God, some people can call it a muse. But I find it with every person has a capacity to be creative, but at the same time, I guess if you're really invested in the creative avenue you're doing, there's no chance that you will continuously regurgitate someone else's work. You would always want to put a stylistic imprint. You also want to make your creative avenues known, and gain the vocabulary to be able to express yourself even better.
You were talking about sort of your philosophy about creativity. You hinted at it in the way that you said you think that everyone has the potential to be creative. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
I fully believe that, because everyone wants to express themselves. And I mean, creative outlets are always a great way to be able to express yourself, because, I mean, we do have ideas of how art is or standardized, but, I think art is sometimes quite a subjective thing, or just the act of creativity is sometimes a subjective thing. If you're not willing to wanting to apply yourself in a creative fashion, generally, then obviously you would think you're not creative. But as soon as you find a passion, or as soon as you feel you have a voice that you want to express yourself through, whether it be music, painting, writing, or any of those outlets, I think everyone has a capacity to be creative. The skill and the act of creativity are somewhat, I think, separate entities, because you can learn to be a great painter, but you can't learn to fully express it. You can't really learn to put your imprint and express yourself. That creativity spawns from somewhere, and I think everyone has it enabled in them. It just takes, I guess, maybe like a trigger or something, or just something that you resonate with, and you feel you want to sort of express that. Because I fully believe that creativity is a form of expression. I think it is innate in everybody to be creative. It's just those who follow through with the idea, and those who, I mean, I think people are creative in various ways and forms, not only tied down to, art and expressive of art, but I think it sometimes does take creative thinking for problem solving. So that's also why I believe that all of us can be creative in sort of anything you do. And creativity in art, it's just about, I guess, those who are passionate about it, and those willing to invest time and effort into, aptly expressing themselves through their art. I think it's like the one thing Picasso said: it took him 40 years to learn to draw like a child, which I thought was quite a moving thing, because if you look at a lot of his work prior to, I guess, his most famous works, which is Cubism, a lot of it was realism, and trying to fit into that mold. Once he found a way he could express what he wanted to do, he went to Cubism, which, I mean, he was hailed for, but his greatest works actually don't exist in Cubism. It's mostly realism that exists, but it's the lesser known stuff, because I guess, of postmodernism and the revolution of art during his period with Dadaism and all that, allowed more freedom of expression, I would say. And I think he fully felt he was the artist he wanted to be when he was creating his child, or as he calls it, childlike structures or childlike paintings.
Very well said there, man. Very descriptive, and
Thank you.
it's nice that we also get to learn a bit about some fine arts as well on the side, like our side quest. It's really awesome. You pick something up, sampling itself. How do you sort of approach the legal aspects of that? Like, are there any steps that you take ethically or legally?
I was actually speaking to a friend about it of recent, like, because I am making samples for like Splice and Audio Box. So I'm learning now how to, or at least attempting to make the same samples that I would usually sample, but essentially making my own versions of those to use, I guess, in my own music, but mainly obviously for like Audio Box and for Splice work. I was speaking, like I was saying, I was speaking to a friend. Religious CDs, like Culprit was down almost 10 years ago. And I asked him about sampling because he was like, yo, this one tune of mine too has, I sampled some CDs from a Hare Krishna CD. And I was like, isn't there any legalities or things behind it? He's like, no, all like a religious music or traditional religious music is essentially copyright free. That's excluding gospel. But you'll notice that even gospel songs and like even Hillsong and all like religious stuff, they all saying stuff that's out like the Bible or any religious scripture or singing about that kind of stuff. And so the content will always kind of be homogenous. Just so like gospel is out the question. If you sample gospel, surefire, you're going to get caught. It's one of the biggest music industries, particularly in South Africa. But yeah, sampling religious CDs, like he said he would go to like the Hare Krishna temple and they'd hand out booklets and stuff. And, he'd go there because they were always very nice, very lovely people to speak to. And, he would get some CDs from them. Like they would have fundraisers like, $1 bins or £1 bins where you can sort of pick up old stuff and then just buy it. And yeah, that's one way you can get around the legalities of it. The other is trying to do interploitation, which is not sampling it directly, but replaying it. And I think if you like interpolate like a sample and, just sort of change like the chords or the chord structure, but keeping the same vibe or whatever, or using the same instruments, but essentially writing the same sort of vibe song or same genre song, but in a different way. And then the other one is just obscure the sample until it's unrecognizable. Also, I think I haven't really had a problem with that because I don't think my music is that big in terms of sort of the commercial sphere where there are corporates and, people involved. But, I'm not going to really risk it. I find, but yeah, those I think are the three methods you can sort of get away with. Otherwise, like just look for very obscure records. There's a lot of stuff that is still under copyright, but like because they weren't doing so great, and they're quite like obscure vintage records that probably had like a limited press or release, chances are very likely no one's going to pick up on those samples. It's trying to also avoid really popular stuff or, top of the chart stuff. And then also, I think if you gather any music from before 1950, that's also, I think that's now, there's no longer copyright on those. Those are in public domain. Might be 1920 or 1950. I think recently they changed those laws. Here's another one. I don't know if this is actually proper legalities, is that if you use 3 seconds of a song, you can get away with it because that's too short of the song to notify as a sampling or have to pay for sample clearance. Other than that, there's also services like Tracklib and I think it is Tracklib. I don't know if there's any other services that you pay a subscription fee like you would Splice, and then you can have access to sample all these old records that they have in their catalog, and they keep on adding to the catalog, which I think is also a great way for both, both a way to find great samples and also to, find new music, and then at the same time, artists who are getting sampled are getting paid. Because, I don't know if you know about the case of the Winstons and the Amen break. They've not made a cent from it, but the drum and bass community and I think the hip hop community put something together as a fund to be like, for years, we've sampled this without clearing it. No one's asked for money and nothing. So they put a fund together to at least give the Winstons or their families money for the Amen break because of how popular it was used.
Sure. When you're making a sample pack, what do you prioritize? Like, what makes a really good sample pack?
And also with sample packs, like if I'm doing an entire sample pack by myself, because with Audio Box, we get designated what we need to do. So Skimmy is sort of my superior at Audio Box. So he does like the checking of samples, and he'll give us the work and say, listen, I want to put together this kind of pack. So depending on the vibe of the pack, what he'll do is he'll say, okay, we're going to make Rage Trap. And then he'll give me a set of references, and he'll say, I need 50 melodic loops. And then I will obviously focus on the melodic loops. Personally, for me, in a sample pack, I usually go for the drums. If it's like not on my own sample packs, but going to other people's sample packs, is usually I'm looking at drums. I think those are very imperative and important parts because good drum sounds are so imperative to, I think, for me, good songwriting, especially within dance music and EDM and IDM, and of course hip hop music, because you can essentially get away with some drums and bass, and that can be a full song, But I think that one of the biggest focal points I think of a pack should definitely be its drums, because I mean there's a plethora of drums, but sometimes packs are hit and miss with the drums. And so I think that's a very important part of a sample pack is definitely its drums.
Sweet man, that makes a lot of sense. One thing I want to know, we always hear this term sort of being thrown around, when people talk about clearing samples, whenever people mention Kanye, you're almost within 2 seconds of hearing about samples being cleared. So what are we talking about when we talk about clearing samples? You also mentioned it not too long ago.
Clearing samples is just going through the legalities of it, and it's just giving permission, and then obviously coming to some financial agreement on how things will be recouped from the sale of the song, whether you pay like a flat fee for the usage of the sample, or whether or not you're doing like a passive thing where it's reoccurring payments or royalties or whatever incurring. It's just getting the approval of whoever handles the person you're sampling's estate, or the music estate, or whoever owns the right, the label. If it's the person who still owns the music, then whether or not they want it cleared, or if they give you permission. It's usually labels that'll be asking for the clearance because obviously they want to recoup on that money and on their stuff.
So say for example, Megan, obviously Lemon Dove Duo, Megan has a song called Hypno, and you hear Hypno and you're like, hey, I want to sample that. What's the next process? You then go and talk to Megan and be like, yo, dude, I love hypno. Can I like sample it?
Yeah, you can, and then obviously give them the accreditation that they deserve for that, because you are sampling. If they don't allow you to sample it, then obviously you can't use it. But if you do use it and they decide to go for you, they have all the legal rights to do so. But yeah, I think in that case, if it's not under a label, if it's not signed, or if the rights are not, I don't like to say waived, but waived to a label, then you have to approach the label. You can approach the artist, but the artists can just give you their good blessings. Because one thing that can also circumnavigate something being used sometimes, depending on how the label treats their artists, could be like the artist could be like, yeah, I really like that, and like, no, I don't really want this person to sample my music. And the label's like, well, we don't fucking care because we want money. So sorry, buddy, you don't own the money. You don't own your music. We do. So we'll do what we want.
Yeah, a very good way of putting it, man. I've got one final question on my end. If you look at how I like how you mentioned there in the times of like Jay Dilla and them that they always just define records. You mentioned, you obviously spoke about CDs when you were mentioning, Hari Krishna as well.
Yeah.
And just looking at like the evolution of sample-based music, where do you think it's headed right now, considering, digital platforms, AI, and all of that there?
I don't know if some like I've never actually thought about that, but it's a really good question. Is what is going to be the future of sampling? I'm scared that the art of sampling is going to be killed off, because I mean, with platforms like Splice and every sort of EDM producer or IDM producer is now making their own drums, making their own sounds, making all of this. There's this arrogance or this ego thing with electronic music producers of having to make everything from scratch, kind of thing. I mean, I still have that issue, but now it's somewhat habitual. When I start the song, it's like I start making all the elements, and it's not a good process to go about. But I think with sampling, I actually don't know. I'm starting to think it's quite a foreboding process. I think sampling is slowly going to die. No. I'm actually completely wrong on that. Just thinking about Dua Lipa's newest song, like, people are always going to continuously sample or interpolate tapes. I think that's a word. It was like replaying the stuff instead of sampling it directly from the record itself. And it kind of references another track in terms of how the vocal harmonies and how things are played. And I think sampling will still stay alive, but it's going to be sort of the rehashing of the more popular samples, things that are very identifiable, especially like things from new jazz, like smooth jazz, disco, because like I don't know if her name, what's her name, Corey Lene. She's got that song, "Gotta Catch Another Flight," which is I think the Sugar Hill Gang's song. Grabs the first sampled, and then her producer obviously sampled that as well, and you're seeing a lot of the rehashing of these classics back in dance music. And I think just the age of the samples are going to be a lot newer. I think that what people are going to be sampling, because now, instead of getting like a 1970s Miles Davis sample or John Coltrane sample, which used to be sort of the sort of standard of things, or like a the Gap, or the Average White Band, and samples from them. I think for drums, forever we'll always be using the Amen break, and we'll always be using the Think break until everyone goes deaf in the world. I think because now a lot of people are starting to sample 2000s and 90s rave music, or like dance music from that era. I know Alice DJ's Better Off Alone and Robert Miles' Children are frequently, yeah, someone somewhere decides that it's a good time to rehash these songs. Um, Not that I'm disagreeing with it, but like it's like leave something alone if it doesn't need fixing, because a lot of these rehashes are just done by the labels who own these, who might own these songs and then want to rejuvenate them. But yeah, I think sampling will head. I think sampling will just age in terms of the record selection people are going to pick from, because I know a lot of us are starting to get a lot older, and there's many new kids on the block who are not too familiar with, like, say for instance, I wouldn't say the Beatles, but say for instance like Miles Davis and John Coltrane and the Average White Band, Gap Band, and Earth, Wind and Fire, and the 70s and the disco era of stuff, or like jazz. And even with rock and roll, like, I mean, some kids can go as far as Black Sabbath, but most will probably end at Nirvana, and so I think that's what's going to change in the landscape of sampling. Either that, or with Splice, people are going to outright not ever need to really sample. But yeah, I think just the age group of the samples that are going to be, or the songs that are going to be sampled, are a lot younger. So you're going to start hearing a lot of stuff from the 90s and early 2000s, as opposed to like the 80s and the 70s. Dare I say the 60s? Because I just feel that maybe it's not as relevant to the kids nowadays. And I mean, for them, maybe the 90s and the 2000s are maybe a bit above their time, but it's something that is, instilled in them. It's music they pretty much grew up around. So yeah.
That is very true. Dude, Meeks, I believe you had a follow-up.
Yeah. Okay. So you were talking about an ego in some of the electronic producers that want to make their own samples. Is that not more of like an insecurity that's maybe similar to how some musicians can feel towards like covers versus originals? Like maybe making their own samples is a step up, if you get what I mean.
I would think so. Yeah, I guess there's a certain sense of pride of like, I made all of this. I designed the drums. I did all of this. I don't know if producers, like, I used to feel like, I couldn't call myself a real producer if I couldn't make my own stuff. It was like kind of almost frowned upon to be using other people's stuff in my own head. And then you realize that making music isn't about that. The end product, no one cares. No one cares whether you use samples or not. Like, majority of the people who are listening to music aren't listening for, this person used this guy's kick drum, or this person used that person's snare, that's their snare, kind of stuff. And like, they don't know how to really make music, because most people are like, yo, it sounds good. I enjoy that. I like that. Yeah, I think it's I think it is an insecurity, because you don't want to seem like an imposter or a phony. And in electronic music, there is that snobbishness and elitism about, so who made like with producers? Oh, who made that snare? Oh, that's a Skrillex snare. Oh, and then people are like, those are not the people you're looking to listen to your music. Those are not important people. People who are listening to your music are listeners, fans and enjoyers. They're listening to the entire composition, not pieces and parts of it together.
Are there literal conversations like that happening, bro? Like,
sometimes, yeah. I mean, back in the day, it used to be that, but like, anyone worth their salt now does not care. They really don't. I know some people still like do it, but it's not like I need to be the best and be like the right one doing this and kind of stuff, and I need to make everything myself. There's just people who do that because it like I think it just helps a lot with allowing yourself to mold your sound and creatively, at the most, like it's if you have a program that allows you to do the most finest finickiest detail. um some people enjoy that, but other than that, some people would rather use templates or loops or things like that. I know, for instance, Ebram is one who, like, most of his creative process involves him making all the things he wants to assemble his song. It's like getting a puzzle. Some people find the enjoyment and fun out of making the entire puzzle themselves. That's just something that they do. But even he doesn't even frown on like people who use samples. He's made sample packs himself. It's just stylistically how he wants to employ doing that. And I think with people who still have that kind of attitude, it's you need to decide whether you're a sound designer or you make music. Because if you're making music, nobody cares about what samples you use as long as it's a good song. Because anyone can essentially assemble a song together, but would it be good? If you don't know what you're doing and if you're not inspired or anything, it's probably not.
I can just imagine like a group of elitists just boycotting your music because you used like Skrillex, like a Skrillex kick or something. Like, we're not gonna listen to him. It's weird.
Nah, yeah. No, those are the people who are the weirdest, because they will listen intensively so that they can pick you out. And they call it sample snitching. In hip hop, they used to call it sample snitching when people used to like call out a record you sampled. And people are like, don't do that. That's rude. I like to sample snitch, but I don't do so in a way that is demeaning. I like, if someone uses a sample I really dig, I'm like, yo, big ups on how you flip that sample. Like, that's the stuff. That's the stuff right there. Um, I don't know. I find that quite inspiring. It's very interesting to see people's take on already existing works, and taking a spin on that, because I feel like people are not sampling because they like want to be malicious or anything. It's because they're inspired by these things. It's also just owning up to certain things. Also, I think it's important to note that you shouldn't be making music for producers. Like, it's a zero sum game. You should be making music um, for people, for the average listener, someone who enjoys it, someone who might find some nostalgia in it, someone who might find it inspiring. It might be their wedding song. It might be the song that they break that they break their hearts to, the song that they play when they go out. People are not thinking about, oh, the song is going to be perfect because the snare hits on this certain frequency, and that uses that snare, and I like that snare a lot, and that snare means a lot to me. I've never ever heard a listener ever talk about that. It's only producers, and you're not making. I don't think you should be making music for producers. That's why we make samples. That's for producers.
You've been talking a lot about ways that listeners engage with music. What is your perfect listener like? How do they interact with music and with your music?
That's a funny thing about art, particularly. I wouldn't say there's such a thing as a perfect listener. I think um, things to consider while listening to music is trying to not let trying like listening to the music for listening to the music, and not like attaching other things to it, or like whenever I put out art, it no longer becomes mine, right? Or whenever I put out music, it no longer becomes mine. I'm putting it out there into the field. So whatever impressions it makes, or whatever people feel the music is entirely up to them, and I can't tell them that they're right or they're wrong. My intentions or my message may be misconstrued or missed completely, but it is up to the listener to create their sort of own world around it, and um discernment of the music. Like they get to decide whether it's good or bad. I made the music, so I mean, I can say it's good, but obviously, as a listener, that's just my opinion, and it might be filled with the bias that I made it. However, everyone's different, and I feel like I don't know if they. I guess like yeah, maybe a perfect listener would be someone who's uh, someone who actually just listens to the music without talking over it. I guess that's a perfect listener.
That's perfect. That's the best answer I've heard
Yeah.
to that question. I hate that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to play the beat. Like, just listen to it. Like, don't talk to me.
Just try. It's only 3 minutes long. Please.
Yeah. And I'm sure you'll be fine if you don't hear yourself talk for 3 minutes. Just 3 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Yeah.
What's the last good thing that you heard?
What was Chi. Chi's working on a new track, and it's very Fly Low inspired. And I just took a listen to that. There was a lot of good things I've heard over the past while. Stuff from some of my contemporaries and friends here in Cape Town, from Box Kitty, from Cage as well. He recently released a bootleg of Imanu's "It's Our Destiny," and it's crazy. He's insane. Box Kitty, their demos and their stuff that they're working on at the moment are quite incredible. I'm quite excited to hear what they've got coming up. And then I have been binge listening to Sevda's Leah, that's her name. And she's like a electronic singer and I think also a producer as well. And she works very closely with Nick from Noisia. And her stuff reminds me heavily of Portishead, which when I was around about like 16, I got Portishead. I illegally downloaded it, of course, and that changed a lot for me. And I just sort of fell in love with the darker, melancholic sounds of trip hop. And I think that also played a big role on changing sort of the moods and the tones of my music, because I was engulfed with the sort of miserable music. So her stuff, new Chi stuff that hopefully is going to come out soon, and new Box Kitty stuff that is also going to come out soon. Go check out the Cage song. It's really crazy.
Yeah, in mentioning Cage and Chi, you've collaborated with him on Service Industry and Macabre. I want to know, how does a collaboration typically start for you?
Yeah, I think like with our collabs, the thing is we were all mates and we're all friends. I lived with Lesego. I mean, I lived with Chi in Pretoria, first year out of high school, and his mom allowed him to move in with this 20, like I think I was about 24. Yes, I was 24 years old, university student, like throwing her son into the lion's den with these naughty little first years who are experimenting with drugs and like going partying and like just really risking it for the party. And so how our collabs usually would start is either of us would like sort of write a demo or write like a small demo of a track. And sometimes like she would walk into my room when I was producing and be like, yo, that's really cool. And he'd be like, can I work on that? And it's like, oh, sick. I'm stuck here. Let me send you the stems and then you can take it from here and then send it back to me. With Cage, it was also the same. It's like he would have these tracks that he's working on. He's at a dead end of, but he really likes them. And he just, I somewhat pushed him to be like, listen, let's do more collabs. Let's do more this and that. And he would send me like demos of some of the tracks that he had started that were like 1 minute, 2 minute long, and giving me the stems. And my approach is usually kind of remixing it. Although I've started to learn to sort of try to conserve a lot of the stuff that I got originally and then work around that, adding rather than taking away too much. But yeah, usually usually collabs nowadays are mainly just about what can I add to the song that I think it would help it progress and grow further. I used to be about like, some of the stuff I'd be like, I don't know what to do with this, or I feel like I need to put my imprint on this. And it's not about the case. Sometimes you've got to really, leave your ego at the door and leave you wanting to leave an impression, and doing things for the benefit of the song. So yeah, it usually works like that. If there's an idea that someone sends me that inspires me, then I'll work on it. If I do too much, if like I feel like I hear something completely different, I want to flip it to this, I'll like inform them and say, trust me. And if they don't trust me, I'll still go ahead with it. And hopefully I'll work really hard in making sure that this is something they cannot refuse, that they'll want to work on still, or that they'll want to finish.
I'm an aspiring sample maker, right? Here in South Africa. What advice would you give me?
Yeah.
To sort of just coast along and ensure that I'm, satisfied and happy where I am, making samples.
Practice. Also, watch a bunch of tutorials on like the dumbest stuff, especially like when it comes, depending on what kind of genres you want to make samples for. Because I mean, like for me, sample making is like a job, and it is like selling products. As mindless and as uninspiring as that sound, it's essentially what samples are for. Like, I mean, it's generally, samples I make is for public consumption. So they need to also be somewhat usable, approachable, and sought after, Looking at trends is also a very important thing. And trying to find the presets that people are using. There's a reason that they use them, and they continuously would use them, like especially with melodic stuff, because a lot of the audio box stuff in terms of the melodic stuff is like, I'm not designing every single sound from scratch of the melodic stuff. I cannot for the life of me design a realistic piano. Like, that's why you're paying a surplus of like $50 for a VST piano, because you're now dabbling in coding and physical modeling, which is like deep sound design business. Listen to a lot of music. Find a lot of tropes within the genres that you are trying to approach for. If you want to do it as sort of commercially or as a job, going on to Splice and seeing in the genre that you want to do some of the top packs and try to emulate that pack. It's good practice to learn how to do all those kind of things. Learn at least one synthesizer, a polyphonic synthesizer, something like Serum. If you use Ableton, learn how to use Operator. If you can learn how to use an FM synth, you're going to make your life a lot easier with making drums and stuff like that. But learning something as simple as Serum is easy enough to, learn how to make kicks and snares, learn how to make hats on those things. And yeah, like once you start learning those things, those techniques kind of always stay with you. So you can always you'll learn to add more, subtract more, maybe try something different. What if you did this? And eventually your samples will start sounding a bit more unique and different. If you're also looking to learn how to structure your packs or how to build packs, another thing is also going to Splice, or maybe just even, I legally don't like to say this, but like, go and torrent a pack that you really like. See the structure of the pack, see, their focuses, and see what of their sounds really inspire you, and then think to yourself, as a music maker, what do I need? What would be useful to me? Like, because if it's useful to you and is in a fashion where it's almost plug and play, it'll definitely be useful to someone else. Yeah, I think that's just listening to a lot of music and just sort of figuring out tropes. I also find that if you want to make something that you're not familiar with, like say for instance, rage trap or whatever, engulf yourself in the culture and the music and see what the producers of that genre, like the top producers of that genre, are doing and how they do it and what they are executing and like sort of what they're kind of using and work to the best of your abilities to get as close to that as possible. Like even if you don't have all those tools, you can substitute them always. It's never a difficult issue.
Nice one, dude. Went in depth there. Megan was reminding me as well that you don't just sample, obviously produce, and you DJ as well. And there's some film scoring in there.
Yeah.
If you had to have, if someone had to like really just point a gun to your head and was like, dude, listen, you need to pick one of these and ditch the others. So we've got sampling, we've got producing, we've got being a DJ, and some of the film scoring stuff. Which would you actually like pick?
I really wanted to, my ultimate goal was to, still produce on the side, but full on do film scoring. I really wanted to do film scoring, but it's a kind of difficult game to crack. And then you see some of the talented people who make scores, and it's like, before I used to be like, wow, I could never be that good. And then I realized, wow, I just don't have that money for those libraries, Like that's a really great library using, not to take away from the music writing, but yeah. I think I would be a film scorer. I definitely do enjoy writing music. A producer, because I can still write film score music, but as a producer.
So when it comes to the film scoring game, is it literally about just the library that one uses, or does it goes a lot deeper?
It does go a lot deeper. It's just understanding. It's like I said, like music is a language, and it's understanding the tropes, what works and what doesn't. I mean, they say you need like massive amounts of music theory. Like Hans Zimmer knows fuck all music theory. He's like, he hits notes and he knows his basic minor and major, but he runs purely on like emotive and vibe based stuff. I think it's just good to understand what tools to use when making a film score and what's being asked of you, because it's the same as writing like a dubstep track or something like that. I once asked he's now quite a popular he's a South African film scorer, and he's quite popular. And we became friends many years ago when he was coming to our dubstep parties there. His name is David Houston, and like at the time he was writing film score stuff and all that, and I was writing dubstep music. So he was like, yo man, how do you do all these basses and this crazy stuff? Like and I'm like, but bro, how the hell do you do all the scoring stuff? And he's like, how you write your music is exactly how I write that music, The only thing that really changes is maybe the instruments. So it's like composing a song. And yeah, it's I think also the approach to film scoring needs to be, it's one of like, it's more narrative based than it is just your rigid song structure that falls back into its motif or whatever, because obviously it's meant to accompany something. It's meant to guide, or at least give an audio guide into sort of the emotional state of maybe your characters in the film, or to convey a scene's emotion. Because take an example of like, watch a horror film with like Skrillex Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, and you'll notice if you put that on there, you'll notice how jarring it is. Or if you play like I think maybe closer to film scoring music, if you play Tom and Jerry's score over Sinister 2, it really detracts from the seriousness and the horror of the film. So it's just important to pay mind to what you're trying to do in terms of film scoring, and just knowing the tools. Like there's not much reinventing the wheel. And the cool thing about scoring is sound design isn't is really a very small and minute part of it. Most of the work is done just writing the music and the rhythm in the music is, I think, for me, the most important part. And then just conveying the vibe correctly.
Yeah, it's really, when you mention the vibe and it's just, having that emotive sort of element to it, it reminds me of a conversation I had earlier, where it was the guy that I was speaking to, was a guy that does stuff for Netflix, and he was mentioning that, with his process when he's like placing like a song or whatever, it's as deep as even just trying to match the sound with the frequency of the person's voice so that it translates really well.
Yeah.
And he was also just mentioning that, the game is quite, it can be a bit difficult because sometimes you'll find that the people that maybe own the production or whatever, they maybe need to have like a checklist of sorts where it's like, okay, we need to have X amount of hip hop songs or something like that. And you'll find that half the time the stuff doesn't even match up to what's going on. So it's more work for him trying to fit that into a particular scene. So I can get when you say it's a lot more just extensive and deeper than just, a library. It sounds very tiring, dude.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
It can be, but I mean, the more practice you get in it, the easier it becomes. I guess like that's the same with writing any kind of genre of music. The more practice you put into writing music, the better you get at it. And as long as you've got your ropes about you, you can easily sort of just not easily, but you can convert the things that you've learned and then apply them in the same principles. It's just like maybe learning how to finesse or maneuver around certain things. I mean, like music placement and music supervising is also I would say, quite a tedious task, and you need to have such a particular ear for that. And I've had cases where I try to get hold of the music supervisor for Blood and Water, the Netflix series, when they were while they were shooting, because that's a good period to hit up your the music supervisors on these shows, and then see if they need music. And if you already have like a catalog of music and stuff, it's always awesome because you can just send that to them and they can be like, yo, I really dig this vibe of your, let's say, for instance, this dubstep song you wrote. I really like this vibe. Can you maybe do like a 30-second edit of the beginning, or just cut it and then we can use that as a loop or whatever? And and it's also like a very important thing if you'd want to do placements. So this still falls in line similar to film scoring, but at the same time, it's more like music placement. Is all the things you write, keep them, because what you think is trash could get you a placement on like a Glossier ad, which actually happened to me. I wrote this remix I did this remix for a band called Pomona Dream, but I just really liked the song and I really wanted to make a version for myself, I guess, like sort of a bossa nova version, because I really wanted to learn how to do that kind of stuff and work on that kind of percussive music. And about a year after I finished the song, well, a couple of months after I finished the song, the band Pomona Dream, who I did the remix for, hits me up and says, listen, so we have a friend who manages he manages our label with us, and he also does like sound placement for adverts and stuff, and his client is Glossier, and he really likes your remix. Can we use it for this advert? And I was like, what? Is this a question you even ask? Of course. And all they used was 10 seconds of that song. And I mean, I just wrote that song for myself. It wasn't really like something I thought was gonna gain me traction or popularity, but it was like, for me, one of my first legit musical songs that wasn't like bass music orientated. So yeah, I mean, it was just special to me, but that record ended up getting me a lot of money for the advert, which is awesome.
As someone who plays so many roles in the process, which one do you enjoy the most and sort of get the most out of? And does your sort of the essence of your approach spread to all sort of avenues of the music that you make? Or do you take on different approaches depending on the type of project that you're involved in?
I sometimes try to take different approaches. It's just, I guess it's like more like a road less traveled. I really do enjoy making music. Now more than ever, because I mean, I do spend a lot of time making samples, as it is also the bread and butter. It's like the thing that pays my rent quite a bit. I also do take pleasure in making samples because it's nice to have all your work organized. And when I go to now making music, I don't have to really worry about sound designing or have to worry about finding the right chord, or sitting there with my piano hitting the one note until the one note strikes a chord in my heart or whatever. I can just sort of drop and drag, and if I'm feeling it, it's usually one of my own samples, so that I can just put it in there and like sort of vibe for a bit, and then just get to work producing stuff, or at least just beat making, without having to get too extreme with sound design, which I thoroughly do enjoy doing. I think, yeah, for me, music production and beat making is probably my favorite out of all the stuff that I do. Although like sample making is almost, I'm finding I'm having this big issue now, because I've just finished off a pack and work is a bit slow at the moment, so I'm sort of waiting. And then I wanted to make a ballet funk tune, and I ended up making all the drum samples for it. I couldn't help myself. I just ended up starting to design more and more sounds. And by the end, like, I mean, the song now is kind of fleshed out, but I wasted a good 2 days on just making sounds. But I kind of just fell into that because you were also mentioning about like approaches. So with making samples, my approach is a little different. There is kind of a common goal in mind and a common end of designing to get something out of it. So I may have like sort of a vague idea of what I want to do, and then from there, with production, it's usually something inspires me, or I'm vibing with something, or I hear something, and I'm like, I hear the song, I hear sort of this vague idea of a song, and I'm gonna go for it. But I don't really know what the end result is going to be, or where I'm going to land up. I just sometimes let the process take it away. But yeah, it has become kind of a little bit difficult of late, because I sometimes have to shift the thinking or the approaches with creating music. And then depending on the kind of music I'm making, with electronic music, it's or beats, I try not to think at all. I'm like, I need to get a rhythm. And once I've got a rhythm down, it's the one note thing I start doing. I'll load up like a bass or something, and then I'll start one noting it, or like load up like a lead and then just come up with a cool lead line or whatever, or just drop and drag a sample and then just make the beat. That's especially with like beats and like trap stuff. When I do like more avant-garde or like more experimental music, which I'm trying to convert, like trying to move away from, I end up, I really like, I'll put a narrative to it, or I'll put a story to it. And the certain sounds that I'll use, like I'll start using a lot more Foley, and I will always like try to reference more trip hopier stuff that I was mentioning earlier, and like draw inspiration from that to sort of, like as I would film scoring, like tell the narrative of the story that I want to do.
The way you incorporate different sound effects and elements of sound design into your work is one of my favorite things about it.
Thank you.
The detail that you're able to get, and like it's so crunchy, but it's so many layers. I love it.
Thank you.
Are you working on anything? Like, is there anything that we can look forward to?
Well, we've got a Splice pack that's, I think, coming out in April. Myself and Skew, through Saturate Records, we did a Splice pack together. There is myself and Cage also did a Splice pack that's already out, via Saturate Samples as well. I got that to look forward to. I did a plug-in B sample pack for audio box. I'm not sure when that's coming out, but that should be coming out. I don't know if they're going to release it this end of this month or next month, but I did a remix for Lord Gemnu. And yeah, I've got a couple of collabs in the works, but I've sent back I've sent the work to the artists to, do their parts on it, and they still haven't gotten back to me, so I'm still kind of waiting on that. At the moment, I think it's just sample packs at the moment, but I am working on some new music. I think I'm trying to do a more pop approach, I guess, slightly more approachable music instead of really being full on out there and experimental. Just trying to limit myself and really sort of get into that scope and hone in on that kind of stuff, because I think like things like the Macabre, for instance, that I wrote under Physicist was it's great and experimental, but it also can be quite isolating to those who are not enjoyers of like really out there electronic music. So I still want to incorporate that kind of emotion, feeling, and composition, yet put it into a more pop sphere that is, I would say, a bit more controlled and a bit more, a bit more approachable. Because I write a lot of, it can be slightly isolating and jarring music that I can write. But yeah, I think I want to do more approachable and I guess a bit more fun music.
Hey, that is epic, man, dude. I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight, and for just spending some time with us on a Saturday evening.
No problem.
For anyone who wants to maybe reach out to you, work with you, or just follow what you're doing, what are your handles quickly for them?
On Instagram, it's at zainwolf.flac. That's ZAINWOLF.FLAC. On Twitter, I think it's ZainWolf ZainWolf ZA. Where else? SoundCloud, same thing, ZainWolf ZA. You can also email me at ZainWolfZA at gmail.com and holler about collabs. If you want to collab, or if you want to just know some stuff, or you're interested in, I guess, anything music related or audio related, I'm down to answer any questions as far as best as my capacity will allow me.
Hey, that is dope, man. And for anyone who wants to check out our stuff, we've got our website, www.sludgeunderground.com. That's where you'll find all the episodes. That's where you'll find all the merch. Do get some merch, because we got a couple of things that are out and we're running a sale as well. So check that out. We'll leave the links in the description. And just quickly for me, Zain, the difference between FLAC and Wave.
Both are lossless audio, but I think FLAC is completely uncompressed lossless audio. So there is no conversions or no nothing. It's just raw. I think. And yeah, WAV is WAV. Yeah.
Sweet. What's going to be the outro song for this episode? Thanks, Meeks, for reminding me. What song are we playing out with of yours?
Damn. What song of mine?
The toughest question.
Yeah, it's a tough question.
They're all so good.
Maybe Stages of Depression.
Stages of Depression.
Yeah, I think it's probably somewhat approachable and at the same time really, really nerve-wracking.
Sweet. Guys, enjoy Stages of Depression by Zain Wolf. From all of us, it's bye for now.
Because I didn't want to face anything. Because I didn't want to face anything.